Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
All right, welcome back to The Sideshow. For today, Mike has got a side for us. So, Mike, why don't you let us and everyone else know what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mark. I think that this is a great, one of the great sides, and the side I'm talking about is from Van Morrison's Moondance, side 1. Van Morrison is an artist that a lot of people have heard of. Not as many people have actually heard a lot of Van Morrison music, but he's someone whose name is out there, and a number of his songs have really found their way into the public consciousness. But there's also a lot of his material that never got extremely popular for one reason or another. Now, this album is, I think, one of his more popular, if not his most popular album, and a number of the songs have really achieved a lot of resonance. And Van Morrison he's a very unique artist in my opinion. He developed a sound that just when you hear it, you sound like, oh, that sounds like Van Morrison. Not just his voice, but just the style. He created his own style of music. From a number of different sources, and people can get on the internet and read all sorts of things about Van Morrison, and I'm not going to regurgitate things that I've heard, but there's no question that he managed to create a very unique sound, and I think in my opinion, it really coalesced for the first time on his Moondance album. Which was released in January of 1970. Now, before that, I mean, in Van Morrison's career leading up to Moondance, he originally was a member of a band from, I believe it is Belfast in Northern Ireland, called Them. And actually, they were kind of a rough and tumble R&B band with white guys from Ireland. Mm-hmm. And Van Morrison wrote the song Gloria, which was a big kind of garage rock hit. Mm-hmm. And there were other songs that Them did that achieved a certain amount of popularity. There was Mystic Eyes, Here Comes the Night, and people can go out and kind of explore, but it's really pretty high quality material. Sort of like not unlike some Rolling Stones material from the mid '60s that was that you don't necessarily hear on the radio. Just kind of a good, tough R&B band, and Van Morrison, I mean, almost had kind of like a tough guy sort of persona almost in when he was singing lead in that band, and which was not the way he was certainly later in his career. Mm-hmm. But in any case, Them was where he started, and
it is interesting. That song Gloria. Powerful. You talk about like garage. I mean, that Gloria. Glory. I mean, it's a booming kind of punching kind of song that you don't necessarily associate with some of the stuff, especially on his first couple albums. But he absolutely had that had that fight inside him when you listen to that song.
Well, and you mentioned that song. I mean, that is just a great rock and roll song.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to digress too long, but in 1985, I went down with a friend from Appleton to Madison to see the band REM at the Stock Pavilion on the campus in Madison, and that still had just open sawdust floor. I believe that Murmur or Reckoning was the current album, but I mean this was relatively early in REM's career before they got as big as they eventually did, and that was one of the funnest concerts that I ever attended. Back in those days, Madison, Wisconsin, the 18-year-old drinking age. They were selling beer at the show in plastic cups. People were pulling out dugouts and getting high, and it was a lot of fun. And for the encore, they did Wild Thing, like a Wild Thing Gloria medley. And I'll tell you, that place was fucking rocking. And everyone was singing along with Gloria.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those songs that you get a good band and they start cranking it out and everybody's into it.
Yeah.
It's simple, it's straightforward, blah blah blah. But so that's kind of how Van Morrison started out.
Yeah.
With this band. And I don't recall exactly how many years they were recording and whatnot, but it was around 1967 that them stopped performing together, and Van Morrison came to the United States and was living in the Boston area in the United States, and may have been Cambridge, Massachusetts, but the Boston area somewhere. And apparently he was hanging out with Peter Wolf, who went on to be the lead singer of the Jay Giles Band, that many people may have heard of. But in any case, he was connected to a music producer named Bert Burns, who may have been involved with them in Ireland. But in any case, he ended up doing some recordings for a record label called Bang Records. And one of the songs that was recorded at that time was Brown Eyed Girl, which is one of Van Morrison's, another not quite as just potent as Gloria, but I mean a very strong rock song that resonated. A lot of people. I mean, I played in a band before the kids were born here in Rhinelander, and we played Brown Eyed Girl, and just people love it. I mean, it's one of those songs that a lot of people recognize, really like. But a lot of the other material was a lot more R&B, a lot more, some of it was straight blues. And he did a 10-minute slow blues song called TB Sheets, which was basically about going to visit his girlfriend who apparently had tuberculosis and was in a sanatorium. And
ouch.
So very different in tone than and in style and in feel and in vibe and in everything from Brown Eyed Girl or Gloria.
Yeah.
And then some kind of like snappy, like upbeat numbers. Row Row Rosie. There's a blues song called "Who Drove the Red Sports Car," and you could tell me I don't know why that was a title, but a very, very well constructed blues song. Just some good material. But Van Morrison really didn't have any involvement in the packaging of these recordings and the marketing of these recordings. And there was an album that was released on Bang Records around that time that was called Blowin' Your Mind. And it had like some psychedelic art on the cover and a picture of Van Morrison. And number one, Van Morrison, that wasn't what he was putting out. I mean, that wasn't the message that he was putting out at that time, or just the wavelength that he was on, and so he didn't really care for the way that all that was handled,
Mm-hmm.
and so he did not end up recording anymore with Burt Burns or with Bang Records, but he had already started to write material that was also very different from not only different from them, but different from some of these songs that he'd been doing on Bang Records, and they were lyrically a lot more poetic, and musically just a lot different. He was starting, harpsichord was an instrument that he became interested in, mm-hmm. and almost more of a jazzy kind of feel that he liked, and this all eventually came out in a record that was released, I believe, in 1968. At least it was recorded in 1968 and released either later in 1968 or early 1969, called Astral Weeks, mm-hmm. and that is regarded as one of Van Morrison's more substantial artistic creations, and it's a difficult album to describe. He had some jazz musicians. He had an upright jazz bass player, had some horn players, and he basically kind of, during the recordings, he went off into a booth by himself with an acoustic guitar, and they'd say, well, how do you want us to play? And just, well, here's the chords and here's the structure. You just kind of play what you want. Mm-hmm. And they had the sessions in the evening rather than during the day. And it's just a very unique sounding album. And it's described by some as a song cycle, but it's kind of challenging mm-hmm. to get through the whole album, but very worthwhile. And not the sort of thing that was going to get played on the radio.
Yeah,
I mean, it appears that with Astral Weeks, radio airplay was not what Van Morrison was necessarily looking to achieve. Not mm-hmm. that he wouldn't take it, but he wasn't crafting his music to fit into any kind of format. Mm-hmm. And
that it's interesting because that it's kind of interesting how the experiences that Van Morrison had seemed to kind of shape him, because he'd gone into the studios with Bang Records, as you talked about, they weren't even supposed to put out an album. They were going to be producing singles that were going to be released. So there's a focus on more commercialism, and they turned around and released an album. And I didn't talk to Van Morrison about that, but what you kind of hear was this: he didn't even know they were going to release an album, and if he had known they were going to release an album, it sure as shit wouldn't have been that, right? So he goes into the studio now for Astral Weeks, and I think he has a different kind of notion of what he wants to do with an album, and it didn't necessarily align with producing a lot of commercial single type hits, and that shows. I mean, to your point, the music isn't as accessible as something that's got a bunch of singles that are on it.
But one of the things that happened with Astral Weeks was that after they did the initial sessions, and it was a record company producer that produced that album, added some strings on some of the songs. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd never heard anything but the official release of Astral Weeks, so that's what I think of. Mm-hmm. But Van Morrison, he said that it turned into something that was not the creation that he had in mind, mm-hmm. despite the fact that over time Astral Weeks has received universal critical acclaim, even though it mm-hmm. hasn't been as popular as some of his other material.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, he did accomplish something artistically substantial, mm-hmm. and was recognized for it over time with Astral Weeks, but it wasn't what he wanted. It didn't turn out the way that he really wanted it.
Yeah.
So during 1969, when he was recording the material that became Moondance, he is the producer,
Hmm.
and because he wanted to make sure that when it was all said and done, that he was in charge. And what he kind of did is he took uh, the Brown Eyed Girl and some of the kind of soulful music that he'd recorded with them and for Bang Records, and then he kind of combined it with the more sort of airy, freeform material on Astral Weeks, and came up with what I think is a combination of the two that was more accessible than either,
Yeah.
and just as artistically substantial, in my opinion. The album Moondance, I've got the cover here. It's got pictures of Van Morrison on the front. He's a kind of a hipster, got this
Yep.
intense look in his eyes with the mustache and goatee. There's a clean shaven shot of him on the back, with the song titles and the members of the band and whatnot. There is a gatefold. There's a couple pictures of his wife, whose name is Janet Planet, and some writing. There's nothing particularly uh, notable about the inside of the gatefold. Uh, but he put out Moondance, and the first song is called "It Stoned Me," and this is early 1970. January 1970 is when the album was released. It was recorded during 1969, and so stoned sort of gives this druggy sort of connotation, but the song is really nothing like that. It's a uh, it's not a fast paced song, but it's not a slow song either.
Hmm.
So it's I mean mid tempo song, and there's nothing particularly uh, extravagant about the music, but you've got piano, you've got the drums are relatively restrained. You've got, I think, two different acoustic guitars playing, and he's basically talking about when he's a kid, him and a buddy of his went out one day to go fishing.
Hmm.
That is what the song is about. And half a mile from the county fair, and the rain came pouring down. Me and Billy standing there with a silver half a crown. I mean, some money.
Yeah.
Some hands are full of fishing rods and the tackle on our backs, but we just stood there getting wet with our backs against the fence. And it's just this very simple, but it gives you're there
Yeah.
with him and his buddy standing by the fence waiting for the rain to stop. And he talks about, oh the water, hope it don't rain all
All
day.
day. Yeah.
And it stoned me to my soul, stoned me just like jelly roll. So and so the stoned me, I don't think it's a drug reference. I think it's something that it's just a memory that that made an impression that stayed there.
And at the if anything, the notion of stone would be a natural high, right?
Yeah.
That he achieved by being out in nature in the country. I get the idea. I don't know, but I get the idea that this would have been a place that he would have regularly gone to, right? To nice place to get away. We go fishing. We're out in the country. We're away from the county fair. We're away from the hustle and bustle. And the way that the music plays with it you can picture yourself kind of walking through a little trail in the woods with a stream by there, and that kind of feeling, or that natural high that you would get in that, the calming, the soothing effect that being out in the country, being out in a pleasant outdoor thing, even if it is raining, because to the point, I hope it don't rain all day, is what he's thinking. So
when he says, and it stoned me to my soul, it stoned me just like jelly roll. Now, in like blues music, jelly roll referred to, kind of the intimate affections provided by a woman. But I think he may be talking about the musician named Jelly Roll Morton
Mm-hmm.
here. I don't know. I've never read that necessarily, but just the
Yeah.
tone of the song does not suggest the other
Oh,
alternative.
I agree, and he clearly got enjoyment, got a rush or a feeling of joy listening to music. I did read somewhere that his father had a massive record collection that he had actually acquired while he had lived in Detroit. So this was music. This would have been a large amount of music that probably wasn't available to a lot of people in Ireland at the time, and exposed him not only to different types of music that come through in some of the songs that he's playing, but that you can, yeah, made me think back to when I was listening to Jelly Roll, right? And how good that made me feel, or just how it made me stop in my tracks listening to how I can absolutely see that.
Yeah, and um, the chorus, it stoned me to my soul, stoned me just
Hmm.
like jelly roll. And then come around to the next verse, and there are no guitar breaks.
Hmm.
It's not. I mean, it's not that kind of song. I don't believe that there are any electric guitars in the song.
Hmm.
It's they're all acoustic guitars. But the next verse is. I mean, it's this song. It's like a short story, almost
Yeah.
more so than a song, because and the rain let up and the sun came up and we were getting dry, almost let a pickup truck nearly pass us by. So we jumped right in, and the driver grinned, and he dropped us up the road. And we looked at the swim, and we jumped right in, not to mention fishing poles. So I mean that's just like you can envision them. Okay, it's the rain stops, the sun comes out, they're coming out, a car comes along, they hitch a ride, they get out, they get to the pond or the pool or the whatever, and they just, instead of saying screw this, let's take a dip
Yeah.
and jump in with their fishing poles. And then it comes back to the water. I mean, water flows through this
Hmm.
song, kind of, a river runs
Yeah.
through it. The water flows through this song. I mean, and let it run all over me. Because now that, but first they wanted it to stop raining, but then the sun came up and they're hot and they want to get in the
Yeah.
water and cool down. And then the same, it stoned me to my soul. Uh, and then the story continues on, where on the way back home we sang a song, but our throats were getting dry, and then we saw the man from across the road with the sunshine in his eye. Well, he lived all alone in his own little home with a great big gallon jar. There were bottles too, one for me and you. And he said, hey, there you are. Now, with sunshine in his eye and a big gallon jar, you're thinking moonshine and
Yeah.
here's
Yeah.
bottles for you. But but no, that's not what he's talking about. He goes, "Oh, the water, get it myself from the mountain stream." So he's just giving him water,
Yeah.
and which is consistent with the fact that this is a boyhood recollection,
Yeah.
and and it's a great song. I mean,
Hmm.
it's when you listen to it, it makes you think that your childhood was better than it probably really was, because of the fact that I don't know. It just there isn't necessarily an explanation there, but the song makes me feel that it made me sort of feel wistfully fond of boyhood days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know, we spent quite a bit of time outside when we were young, whether it be playing outside or in the scouts, camping and that type of thing. And there is a feeling about when you're young and kind of romping through the woods. There's not a lot of the restraints that you have everywhere else, and the water was a big part of that experience, whether it be a river or a stream or a lake or the rain or whatever, always kind of present as a part of that experience. I'd agree. It does harken you back to some of the fonder memories as a kid.
So that's the side opener, and it's I mean it is one of Van Morrison's great
Hmm.
songs.
Yeah.
And there's some other ones on this side. Many people, the second song on the side is the title song, Moondance. And many people have heard Moondance. And Moondance is definitely a jazzy song.
Hmm.
Just there's no other way to describe it. I don't know if I would say that it is jazz because and I don't have the technical musical know-how to say, well, what constitutes real jazz and what is just
Yeah.
kind of jazzy. It doesn't really matter, but this is definitely jazzy. And the instrumentation, the way the piano comes in, it just has a very jazzy. There's the horns
Hmm.
that are in it. Many people are going to recognize the song Moondance. It's a
Well, and
relatively,
I would
relatively
actually
popular.
say it almost pulls off a almost like a big band feel. You can almost picture like a band director kind of snapping his fingers as the boom, 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 boom. I mean, I think that's where that notion, jazz and rock and roll. There's a lot of areas where they kind of intersect, and you make a very good point. Is this jazz? Is this pop? Is this rock? Whatever it might be. But I think it's that notion that you can almost picture the band playing again. You've got the horns in there, and you've got this kind of a brush drum that's kind of playing there as well. And I could myself, I just picture this kind of band leader kind of snapping their fingers with the band.
Like kind of you're at like kind of like like the Dirty Dancing 1950s
Yes, yeah, yeah,
where they've got the band there, and
yeah.
this is one where the dancing would be a little more on the fast side but
Mm-hmm.
still in that sort of restrained,
Yep.
more cultured way. And I mean it's just it's a toe tapper. It
Yes.
really is, and tapping your toes and snapping your fingers is really a good way to describe it. But I mean, the song itself in terms of lyrics was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It's a romantic song. It's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars up above in your eyes. A fantabulous. I mean, and that's the actual words.
Yeah.
A fantabulous night to make romance neath the cover of October skies. I mean, he's just the moon dance is the kind of the metaphor for the wooing of a
Yes.
woman, and he certainly, I mean, he makes no bones about what he's looking for
Yeah.
lyrically in the song, but it's not in a garish way. It's in a way that sounds very natural.
Yes.
And so I want to make love to you tonight. He's kind of putting his cards on the table. But it seems so genuine and sincere and so consistent with the mood that the music creates. Can I just have one more moon dance with you, my love? Can I just make some more romance with you,
Hmm.
my love?
Well, and he's got a way, and I wouldn't call it. There's a softness. He doesn't have a soft voice, and there certainly is some things that are kind of biting but he's got a softness to the way that he sings the lyrics, which on top of this music that is kind of bouncy and light on your feet type stuff creates just a neat sound and effect. And this is a such a great song to like have on when you want things light and moving, because that's, you just feel kind of light and kind of like floating in air almost as you're listening to this song.
Well, there is a an instrumental break in this song, which is
Yeah.
primarily piano, and that is a very the big band type jazz is probably the best way to describe this. Um, uh, I mean, I didn't think of it as big band because the horn sound is a little more. You don't have the big horn section like you
Yeah,
would with
it's
a big
more
band,
subdued than
but
like some big brass thing.
but other than that, just the vibe that you get from the music is like that, and the you can just see if you're at the sort of nightclub we were referring to earlier, and during the piano break, maybe there's like a spotlight comes on and the pianist is playing.
Yeah.
You're tapping your toe and snapping your fingers. It's like this is all right, and the song basically, I mean he's singing this romantic song to the woman he's suiting, uh, and I don't know if there's really that much more to talk about the lyrics, but
Hmm.
it's one of the songs that I hear most often on the radio by
Oh
Van
yeah.
Morrison. It's it was it had a spot in American Werewolf in London. A
Hmm.
lot of Moon songs found their way into that movie,
Yeah.
but when he's making love with the female character is when Moondance is
Yeah.
playing, and it's just a great. I mean, it is a great song, not just a great Van Morrison song, but a great song, from that era. And it was, there wasn't a lot of stuff like Moondance that was out in what would be kind of I mean, it's not rock and roll,
Yeah.
but Van Morrison was an artist that a lot of rock fans listened to.
Hmm.
And so he managed to inject something into these songs that struck a chord with rock and rollers.
Hmm.
Both so far, both of these two songs, It Stoned Me and Moondance, two very different songs, but that had some similarities between each other,
Hmm.
and managed to kind of resonate with a rock audience.
Hmm.
I mean, just Moondance is just a spectacularly good song. Uh, the music, the writing, the singing, the whole package. It's just a tremendous song.
Yeah, and I to your point, I mean, I think that opinion is held widely. It's still played a lot on the radio. Probably the song that the most people would recognize if they don't listen to a lot of Van Morrison, that they would have heard this particular song. So yeah, great song.
Um, uh, Moving on, the third song, and there are five songs altogether on the album, and the third song is called "Crazy Love," and it's a very straightforward song. It's a very tender, very gentle, um, uh, sort of veering towards the sappy almost,
Hmm.
and his voice uh, is just it's quiet and gentle, uh, which it was not really the case on the first two songs,
Hmm.
and it's not going to be the case on the fourth and fifth songs either.
Hmm.
There's just a quiet gentleness that is sort of consistent with this just unabashed expression of love and affection for this woman. Um, uh, there is a scene in a movie where this song uh, uh, is used, and I think it's really a wonderful way to uh, uh, maybe introduce someone to this song. I can't remember the name of the movie, but
Is this
it's
phenomenon that
with
the
John Travolta and
yes,
Kyra
yes,
Sedgwick.
yes,
Yes, yes.
yes.
That's the scene, and this song is playing, and she's like shaving him with a straight razor, as I recall, or
Washing his hair and cleaning
yeah,
him up,
cleaning him up,
and
and it's and the way that the scene is played by the actors is it meshes well with the sentiment of the song. And if I mean that's the best way for me to describe that song to someone, to watch that
oh
scene.
yeah, I agree. In fact, that's the and maybe I don't know, chicken or egg. I don't know if it's because of seeing that scene or what I thought about the song before I sang it, but it's kind of like these two people that should have been together, and then they finally get together, and it's not there's just a quietness to how they want to spend their time, right? That now that they're together, that I do think that, yeah, you want to get a feel for that, watch that scene, check out the movie and where they play that song, or I'm sure it's on a video as well. Yeah, it is that sums it up pretty well. I'd agree with you. Just a pretty romantic ballad, soft. It's tender in how it comes across, and that's how it delivers through the entire song. Really a nice kind of soft centerpiece to this particular side.
Yeah, I mean the sort of song where you're it's your anniversary and your wife is coming home, and you get out a couple of glasses of wine, and then before you sit down you put this song on and dance for a few minutes before you
Yeah,
sit
yeah,
down. It's
yep.
just it's just a very straightforward, very and just genuinely presented,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a beautiful song. For a love song that's veering towards the sappy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a great song, and but I mean, if anything, it's the weak link on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not weak at all.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, I like I say, I really think it sits as a good centerpiece. It's it's a quieter, softer song, but yeah, I mean, plenty of occasions where it's perfect for the mood.
yeah, and a lot of sappy love songs are just that. They're
Yeah,
sappy. But that's not to say that the type of love and affection that they're talking about isn't something that people should want.
yeah.
Whereas as this just it just flows so much smoother. It avoids the sappy.
Yeah.
But in any case, moving on. The next song, if someone who had heard of Van Morrison, but they'd never really heard Van Morrison, they're like, so what? What's I mean, play some Van Morrison for me. I mean, if there was one song that I might pick as sort of if you want to get an idea of what Van Morrison is like, listen to this song. The song would be Caravan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's where I talked earlier about how he combined some of the elements of what he'd been doing all through his career, not only with them or the more R&B bluesy stuff he was recording with Bang Records, or the more sort of esoteric stuff on Astral Weeks. All of that combines very well, I think, in this song. And it starts out with uh, um, this piano, and then these drums, and then kind of this just unique Van Morrison-y syncopation and beat. Very simple, but also not plain.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, I don't want to fumble around too much trying to describe it, because I think people should just listen to it. But it's I would call it very characteristic Van Morrison music.
Mm-hmm.
And the lyrics are fairly they're not real dense. And the caravan that he's talking about, I mean, I think of as it's a gypsy caravan, which I believe means kind of like a hippie caravan. or
Mm-hmm.
not unlike, like a group of people hanging out in the parking lot of the Grateful Dead concert, or a
Mm-hmm.
Woodstock for that matter.
Yeah.
I think I mean, that's what I see
Yeah.
as the caravan. And it's and the caravan, it's on its way. I can hear the merry gypsies play. Mama, mama, look at Emma Rose. She's playing with the radio. La la la
Mm-hmm.
la 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 la. Uh, and when you hear the song, you kind of get this, you get this sense. There's a scene, there's people around, and the radio is playing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's music. Um, and then and the caravan has all my friends. It will stay with me until the end. Gypsy Robin, sweet Emma Rose, tell me everything I need to know. Uh, and so it really the way that I hear those lyrics is it makes me think of that sort of group of merry prankster like hippie types, just listening to music, being together, sitting around the fire.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of bringing together two different concepts. Again, you have this notion of the gypsy caravan, and that applies to a lot of things that it could be. But what brings into that is the power of music, listening to the radio, or just in general, how important music can weave into a family or a caravan, a group of gypsies or a group of friends, or that type of thing, about how you know how life and about how memories of life are mixed in with music, and that the radio was a big part of this song.
The well, and there's sort of two things in this song that I look at. One of which is what you're talking about. The sort of the fact that in the kind of scene that is painted by the lyrics of the song so far, there's always music in the background.
Yeah.
Whether it's someone playing a guitar or the radio on, or just
Hmm.
people there's just music is kind of around. And certainly, the most direct interpretation is because they're playing music on the radio.
Hmm.
Uh, and the chorus of the song, turn up your radio and let me hear the song. Switch on your electric light. Then we can get down to what is really wrong. I long to hold you tight so I can feel you. Sweet lady of the night, I shall reveal you. Uh, now, the other aspect of the song that I've always taken from this is that the turn on your radio and let me hear the song, switch on your electric light is sort of like, you know, you communicate with me.
Hmm.
When you turn on your radio, it's like, tell me what's in your heart. Tell me how you're
Hmm.
feeling. I want to tell you how I'm feeling. Let's get
Hmm.
down to when he says, then we can get down to what is really wrong. And the only thing that's really wrong is the failure to communicate.
Hmm.
I long to hold you tight. So I think that the turning on the radio is also, aside from just playing music, which is certainly something the song is about. I think it's also about let's get in tune with each other,
Hmm.
so we
Let's
can
get on the
talk.
same frequency.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we can get down to what is really wrong. So we can really
Yeah.
talk and we can sort this out and communicate. I've always taken that as to be part of what he's singing about. And
I I hadn't I hadn't thought of it like that, but that makes an incredible amount of sense. And there you talked about how this is a lot like Van Morrison songs. This is a good example of it because you get kind of this whether you want to call it a bridge or a break from the conventional structure of the song, where he begins to, and Van Morrison does this a lot. He's kind of like, turn it up, radio. Just he's kind of, instead of like singing, he's just pushing ideas out, and then the music, the music fills in, and it's almost I can hear that him pleading. It's like, hey, talk to me. He's saying turn on the radio, but what he's, meaning. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm buying it. I'm buying it.
And it's like a lot of the best lyrics, it's not black and white or nailed down, and it's listening to the song that creates the impression that people get. But that's something that I've taken from it. And and that break that you talk about, where it's, turn it up, radio.
Yeah.
And then that is a very characteristic Van Morrison, with the way
Yes.
the horns come in there. I mean, that's just it's very well done. And he'd really kind of blossomed into himself on this album, and as for reasons I was saying before, I think on this song. And then, the last regular verse is this, and the caravan is painted red and white. That means everybody's staying overnight. Barefoot gypsy play around the campfire, sing and play, and a woman tells us of her ways. La la la
Hmm.
la 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 la. Uh, and so that definitely goes back to we got a group of people hanging out, making merry, reveling in the music. Excuse me. Before coming back to uh, turn up your radio, let me hear the song, switch on your electric light, and we've already talked about that. Uh, uh, and so they do another, sweet lady of the night, I shall reveal you. And then there's the other one, another round of turn it up a little bit higher, radio. But then to end out the song, he starts to get in this uh, la 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 la
Hmm.
la la, and for I mean, I don't know exactly how long it is, but it stretches out a bit, just that la 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 la. And when you're sitting there listening to it, as the song is kind of starting to fade out, it's awful hard to not start tapping your foot and
Yeah.
start singing the la 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 la. It just, he creates a sing along almost, just with la la la. And I think it kind of captures that mood when you've got that group of people sitting around the fire outside the gypsy caravan with music swirling around. It really it captures that, um, uh, and is a wonderful way to end what is, I think, one of Van Morrison's absolute best songs, and a great song in its own right.
Hmm. I'd agree.
Um, uh, uh, and the next song, which is the last song on the side, and is a close second, as to songs that I would point to as one of Van Morrison's high points, is Into the Mystic. And this song's a little more straightforward than Caravan. Straightforward isn't the right word. It's a little simpler,
Hmm.
and the way it starts out with just an acoustic guitar, and then a second guitar comes in, and there's some drums, and it's just kind of it's consistent with just sort of pushing the boat out onto the water, and then just pushing it, and it just starts to float in a direction. You get this feeling that we were born before the wind, also younger than the sun, ere the bonny boat was won, as we sailed into the mystic. Now,
Hmm.
what the fuck is that about? Into the mystic. Well, it can really mean whatever you want.
Yeah.
And but it a lot of ways, we did a podcast on Heart Dreamboat Annie, and that the song Dreamboat Annie, where setting out, and you get this feel of, like, just going out on a boat into the
Yeah.
water, sailing somewhere with the wind in your face, and it's you're gonna go
Hmm.
somewhere, and it's gonna be good. It's gonna be something.
Yeah.
The beginning of the song is similar to that. I think a little more, little deeper. I mean, this song has more depth to it, both musically and lyrically, but the vibe is very similar.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
uh,
and I've read somewhere that he made a comment in later years that he actually, when he was first writing this song, it was titled Into the Misty, not Into the Mystic. And the Misty was the name of a river in this area that he used to go out to. We talked about from when he was a boy and that type of thing. So that kind of that kind of makes sense, pushing a boat into the Misty, and around that. But I think and again, I don't know word for word what he was saying in this article, but the sound of the song itself, though, the feeling that he was trying to get was this kind of a more mystical place or plane that he really was looking at getting to, the kind of feeling you get when you're floating on the water, and you're no longer walking on the earth. Just some of the feelings and that come along with it. It's like Into the Mystic just seemed more appropriate for what the vibe he was trying to get across, but
well, and
clearly into a body of water.
well, and after he lived in Massachusetts for a while, he probably heard tell of the Mystic River,
Yeah, yeah,
and maybe just
yeah,
Mystic River, Mystic,
yeah,
seeing the literary possibilities and making things a little more ambiguous. But the lyrics go on to it. Hark now, hear the sailors cry, smell the sea and
hmm
feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic.
hmm
So, I mean, just into the mystic is you're going somewhere,
yeah,
and kind of like nothing, kind of nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you got to go out, if you just sit inside, you're not going to find anything. If you have to
yeah.
go out and find what you're looking for, and then kind of the transition to the chorus. He goes, yeah, when that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. When that foghorn blows, I want to hear it. I don't have to fear it. So there's a combination of like going out into the mystic and also being called back and called back home. And if you go out into the misty river, presumably it's kind of foggy. If the foghorn blows, there's fog. So when you're out on the water in the fog, you're in your own world,
hmm
and you're trying to find yourself. And when the foghorn blows, I mean, I
Yeah.
imagine that to be, you want to find someone to be with. It may be your own world where you are master of your domain, but you know what's
Well,
the point if you can't be with someone? And so the foghorn is connection with another person that's bringing you out of the fog.
and I think the same thing. If I would look at guidance that I would give to whether young people at work or to my kids or whatever, it's like you have to become comfortable getting out of your comfort zone. That's an important aspect of life. To advance, to grow, to move on, to do things, to do challenging things, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, kind of, and into the mystic. This is where you're going to find you might not know where you are. You might be lost. It might be foggy, but that's why it's important to have a base. The foghorn will bring you home. It's the things you can count on, the things that you can rely on, and you may be looking forward to getting home when you're out there in the mystic. It's not always going to be joy and happiness when you're stepping outside your comfort zone. But I kind of like that's what's happening. You're looping out into this place that it's important that you go, yet this foghorn will call you home. And like many of the songs on this side that we've talked about, what makes it so well done is not just it's an interesting message, and the words, they do a good job of painting the picture of going out to sea, kind of being in a foggy environment, but the way that the music wraps in with the lyrics. You feel what the lyrics are trying to say, which is a part of Van Morrison's art that has shined through on all these songs, but you really do hear it here.
And the the break, there isn't like, there's, like I say, I don't believe there's electric guitars that are played in any of the
Mm-hmm.
songs. I think it's all acoustic guitars, but there's the horn figures in the like there's an instrumental
Yeah.
break where they, da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It just really, again, very distinctly Van Morrison. It
Yeah.
sounds like Van Morrison. And and you should kind of follow up about, we've been talking about what is Into the Mystic supposed to be, and I think really it's just into the unknown.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you go out into the unknown, you get lost. And but if you persevere, you'll find someone, and a foghorn will bring you home.
Mm-hmm.
And then
You-
and then when he says, I want to rock your gypsy soul. Now, gypsy, this is a second song where gypsy has come up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another album, St. Dominic's Preview, where he has a song called Gypsy.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of gypsy
Yeah.
in, and the simplistic way that I look at that is he's referring to kind of hippie communal
Well, I mean
type stuff.
an actual gypsy where he grew up, in Ireland. I mean, again, especially back in the 50s and stuff, I still would imagine that you had the actual presence of actual gypsies that were outside the towns and in the countryside where he did hang out from time to time, that he may have encountered from time to time. And and when he gets to the United States, and I mean, he lived outside of the Woodstock area, and other places where, yeah, this kind of, whether it be a hippie type vibe, or if he's in New York, a beatnik type, these people that are a little outside the normal flow, yet they've got a world and a community and lives and that type of thing that are going on inside their own mystic.
Well, you mentioned beatnik. I think that Van Morrison's style of hippiedom was more like Jack Kerouac beatnik type than, Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane,
Yeah,
San
yeah,
Francisco type,
yeah.
or Woodstock type for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Jack Kerouac on the road, going out and digging stuff, and jazz is what the like the Kerouac type beatniks were into musically and whatnot. And so I've been using the term hippie to describe the caravan and gypsy and whatnot, but I think it's more of that was a good word to kind of throw in there, because I think that that's accurate. Van
Mm-hmm.
Morrison was more of a Jack Kerouac style, more of a beatnik type gypsy than a late '60s hippie type.
Mm-hmm.
Although certainly all that stuff was going on, when he was making his music.
Yeah.
But he says, I want to rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. Then magnificently we will float into the mystic. So it's like, he goes out into the mystic himself, but he still wants to be able to come home out of the fog, but then he wants to hook up with the woman,
Mm-hmm.
and then together they go back out into the mystic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, we just, everybody's got to do it. We can't avoid having to go out there into the world and go somewhere and maybe get
Mm-hmm.
lost on the way, but it's going to be much nicer doing it together.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's a very, we've been talking a lot about this song and some of the other songs, but I mean, that's a very straightforward, simple idea, but he presents it so artistically. I mean, he's very literary in my opinion, in his lyric writing, and it's something that it conjures up impressions when you listen to it. Before you go check out the Wikipedia page to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And this song, I don't I like I say, Caravan is the song where if I had to pick, what is the most Van Morrison song of Van Morrison's catalog, but and that's just my opinion. But boy,
Mm-hmm.
this one is close. I mean,
Yeah.
this is it's just a beautiful song, and it's hard not to feel wistfully optimistic
Yeah.
about
I
things
and
when you
it's
listen to this song.
it's also comfortable. That horn part that you talked about, right? They come back to that a lot in the song. So you get a feeling of like of comfortableness with the way they wrap down to it. I mean, I'd agree completely. This whole side is just it's a good side to have on. It's like if you need to feel a little more optimistic, I guess would be the way to go. This is a great side to put on and listen to from start to finish. Again, it's a great example of a side that flows together very well. They're not the songs are not all the same, but you have some. Especially some bookends of some things that just I don't know, they make you feel good listening to them.
The songs have different. The songs are different, but there's a consistency that flows through the entire side.
Yeah.
And more so, when certainly when I had when I was listening to LPs before I kind of made the crossover to compact discs, I never listened to side two.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
this
This was all you needed. Yeah.
there was because this you couldn't. I mean, and I'm not trying to knock the material on side two, but
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, it's not close
Yeah.
to the. I mean, basically, you've got out of 5 songs on side one, 4 of them are just great songs
Yeah.
individually, and the 5th one is still a great song.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just not quite up to that same level. And I agree with you that if you're looking for a side of music that has substance to it and is musically compelling, but aren't interested in that sort of rock and roll, electric guitar, stick it to the man sort of,
Yeah.
rock
Yeah.
song.
Sometimes you don't want to rock and roll all night, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and on those occasions,
Yeah.
this is a great side, and it should be known there in our compact disc world that we live in nowadays, or whatever. There is a deluxe edition of Moondance. It's 5 discs. There's a CD of just the album. The other CDs have like studio outtakes and alternate versions, stuff like that. And then the 5th CD is a Blu-ray audio disc that has a surround sound mix of all of the songs on Moondance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got the equipment to play that kind of stuff, it is wonderful. It is just
Awfully
wonderful.
good.
Very well done, and worth anybody's time. So Van Morrison Moondance, side 1.
Hey, great side, great conversation, Mike.
All right. We will see you, Mark, next time.